Good afternoon. I'm here to introduce our next speaker. He is currently a senior here at John Carroll University. He's a history major, and he is the president of the John Carroll Conservatives Club. He's been working hard to make today as special as possible in honor of the men and women that lost their lives on this sad day. I've worked with Nick on many different projects, and I've grown to admire his patriotism, his patience, and his leadership qualities. And after you get to know him, I think you will too. So please join me in welcoming the president of the John Carroll Conservatives, Nick Tribuzzo.
Thank you for coming, everyone. Before us today are 2,977 American flags. Each marks one of the American lives lost on the morning of September 11th, 2001. But these flags do so much more than just show us the number of lives that were lost that morning. They also tell us the story of those that were lost, a story that we will never forget. As we gaze upon them, we see that our flags hold three noble colors, colors which tell this story better than any newspaper article or textbook page ever could. The story of these lost Americans begins as we reflect on that precious white found in 6 of our flag's stripes. Through the white of these stripes, we are reminded of the innocence of the Americans murdered in these attacks. These were the lives of men and women who woke up each morning, quickly leaving the house for another hard day of work. When they walked through the front door of their homes that morning, there's no doubt they planned on walking through them again that evening, to spend the last few hours of the day much like any other American, by catching up with their friends, laughing with their families, running around trying to complete errands, and in those rare seconds of free time, thinking of the dreams that so often filled their thoughts, things that we ourselves do each day. Among the millions of Americans to leave that morning was Bradley H. Vadas. Just a few weeks before the 11th, Bradley attended his best friend's wedding with his fiancée, Chris McFerrin. And upon leaving, they decided it was time that they too would tie the knot. And the date was set for May of 2002. When Bradley walked through his front door that morning, he was headed to the South Tower of the World Trade Center complex. It was there that he was the senior vice president of KBW, a company which occupied the 88th and 89th floor of the building. And when he left his home that morning, that was where he was off, to work some 1,100 feet high above the hustle and bustle of New York City. Peter and Sue Hansen left their homes that morning as well, but they weren't headed off to work like Bradley was. They were headed to the airport, to board a plane in Boston that would take them clear across this nation to Los Angeles. And it wasn't just the two of them going either, for with them was their beautiful little 3-year-old daughter, Christine. The Hansen family was about to attend a vacation in Disneyland in Los Angeles, and they were going to spend some time with their relatives out on the West Coast. You see, when these 4 individuals walked through the front door of their homes that morning, they would never walk through them again. And while their destinations were some 2,500 miles apart, they would soon find themselves trapped in the same horrific nightmare. A nightmare soon to be brought about by 19 terrorists who had plans of hijacking 4 airplanes and then crashing them into 4 targets. While they were far above the earth, this nightmare began to unfold, and the Hansens and other flight attendants witnessed the evil that would soon plague the land so far below them. It began with the stabbing of flight attendants, the prying open of the cockpit doors, the taking over of the cockpit itself, and then those nauseating shifts, turns, and jerks of the plane that followed. These passengers were now held hostage thousands of feet above their country, their homes, and the ones that they so loved. And before long, they would feel the descent and quick acceleration of the plane as they approached their new destinations. The first of these was reached at 8:46 a.m. when American Flight 11 crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center complex. Then at 9:03, United Airlines Flight 175 crashed into the South Tower. This was the plane that just minutes before was boarded by Peter, Sue, and little Christine as they were on their way to Disneyland. And it crashed just 3 floors below Bradley and his co-workers as they were hard at work. At 9:37, American Airlines Flight 77 crashed into the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia. And at 10:03, United 93 crashed into the empty fields of Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Hundreds were killed instantly because of these crashes, yet hundreds more would perish in the minutes that followed. As the clocks moved faster, government workers found themselves scrambling for the nearest exit of the Pentagon, and businessmen and women found themselves trapped as their floors quickly began to fill with smoke. Thousands of cries for help were made in these precious minutes, and some with great sadness came to the unfortunate conclusion that the only way to escape this nightmare, this horror, this hell on earth, was to jump. Before long, the skies that were so blue that morning filled with smoke as dark as the souls that brought it about, and paperwork filled the air as it fell from the desks of the slain. And then it happened. The screams on the ground became all the more loud, and people raced in all directions of lower Manhattan. And those that looked over their shoulders as they ran saw with the greatest of horror that the South Tower, and soon the North, was crumbling to the ground behind them. Today we come together and remember that the Hansen family and other passengers who boarded airplanes that became weapons were innocent. That mothers, fathers, and engaged fiancés like Bradley Vadas, who entered towers that became targets, were innocent. And that our public servants in the Pentagon, who carried out their duties to this nation, for this flag, till the very second that they died, were innocent. Innocent were the lives of these 2,977 Americans, now marked by mere flags, and their innocence we will never forget. But there's no doubt that the death toll would have been much greater if it wasn't for the heroes of the 11th. And it is to their story that we now turn as we gaze upon the second noble color of our flag, the red found in the other 7 stripes. In that vibrant red, we see the courageous Americans who led selflessly during this crisis, and it is there that their story is told. Among the heroes of the 11th was Frank DeMartini, a construction manager who worked at the World Trade Center complex. When the first plane crashed into the North Tower, it crashed just 6 floors above DeMartini's head. But upon its crash, he immediately took charge, collected himself, and began leading each and every person off of the floor so they could escape to safety to the ground. And after double-checking that each and every human being was off the 88th floor, he too entered the stairwell. But instead of going down with the many, he went up with the few, up to free the Americans just 1 floor above his own. There the people on the 89th floor were trapped, and they were left with no options but to pound and pound on the steel doors that were jammed shut, praying that someone would come to their rescue. On September 11th, God heard their prayers, and DeMartini heard their pounds. He and a man named Pablo Ortiz broke through the drywall surrounding the door with whatever materials they could find, freeing their fellow countrymen from the fear, smoke, and screams that surrounded them. But they didn't stop there. They continued from stairwell to stairwell, from floor to floor, and because of their courage, at least 70 innocent Americans were saved. Courage was also seen high up in the sky. There on Flight United 93, the words, "Are you guys ready? Let's roll," were screamed as passengers ran from the back of the plane toward first class to defeat the terrorists who just minutes before had hijacked their lives. As these heroes fought and fought, the terrorists in the cockpit began rocking the plane left and right, hoping to knock down these heroes. But they continued, and they stopped at nothing. And because of their courage, the plane was forced to crash in the empty fields of Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Because of their courage, the great symbols of the free world, the U.S. Capitol building and the White House, both of which were suspected targets, still stand today. Frank DeMartini and the passengers on Flight United 93 were ordinary Americans. But on September 11th, they led those around them as if they were created for that exact moment. They helped make up the heroes of the 11th. But the final group to complete them are the men and women who were the first responders and emergency workers. New York City Police and Fire embodied courage long before September 11th, and as did their counterparts in Arlington, Virginia and Shanksville, Pennsylvania. But on that day, this trait shined ever brighter. That morning, these warriors did best what so few are capable of doing. They led, they searched, and they saved. While surrounded by screams, smoke, and turmoil. And while we can't thank them in person, we can thank God for the courage He gave them, so there aren't more flags before us today. For courage is what compelled firefighters to go up when everyone else went down. Courage enabled police officers to instill calm and direction amidst fear and chaos. Courage is what led Frank DeMartini and the passengers of Flight United 93 to charge into the darkness while everyone else fled to the light. And it is this defining characteristic of the actions of these men and women which brought life to the words and confirmation to the belief that America is the home of the brave. The final chapter of this story lies in the blue field of our flag. Here, we are reminded that though our fellow countrymen entered the Pentagon, though our brothers and sisters boarded the airplanes, and though our brothers and sisters entered the elevators of the towers, rising higher and higher, transcending building after building of the New York skyline, though each and every one of them did this for the last time that morning, on September 11th, these Americans would transcend to heights that only souls are capable of reaching, to a place of eternal peace where today they walk with our Creator. In the blue, we know of the place these heroes now reside, high above Earth's starry blue skies. When we gaze upon them individually, these flags tell us the story of those who were lost in the 11th, of their innocence, of their courage, and the heavenly peace they now find themselves in. But sewn together, these three noble colors embody a country whose people will never forget. Thank you.